Junction joint failure can be incredibly problematic. It can create a lot of belt tracking problems. It can cause premature failure of the belt itself. Junction joint failure typically will show itself first as an improper wear on the return roll. If you look at the photograph on the left, you can see that that return roll is not wearing, the paint on that return roll is not wearing evenly. It's wearing excessively in the middle and on the outsides. And that's how you can first identify junction joint failure, is watch your return rolls and see how they're wearing, if they're wearing evenly. Now, eventually, junction joint failure can completely separate the belt into thirds, and the photograph on your right is starting to see that become a more problematic situation that this plant's going to have to deal with. Eventually, that can completely separate along these lines and split that belt into thirds. So let's talk a little bit here about what causes junction joint failure. And it's probably most likely attributed to a design flaw. Every conveyor belt that's transitioned from its flat position on the tail pulley to its fully troughed position once it's loaded is really taken on a lot of stress. And that happens in what we call the transition distance. It's the distance from the first fully troughed idler to the flat tail pulley. In that process of the belt forming its trough, there's a lot of stress that's put on the belt because the outsides of the belts are stretched at a greater force than the center of the belt. And that's what causes almost that ripping effect between those thirds in the width of that belt. So that transition distance, it's going to need to vary a little bit depending on the spec of your belt, depending on what the trough angle is that you're troughing to, and depending on the PIW and how much stretch you actually have on the belt. So there's a lot of different factors that kind of come into play when we talk about how far that transition distance is, but it definitely needs to be significant enough to prevent this junction joint failure that can create significant belt failure and belt tracking problems.